You want to know how to sell a tricky R3 zone property in Sherman Oaks, California? If you do, you're going to want to watch this video. This video is about a small lot home in Sherman Oaks, a truly unique Sherman Oaks property for sale with no comps, no clear path to value, and a lot of challenges. But this wasn't your typical Sherman Oaks real estate listing. It was a Sherman Oaks development opportunity, and I'm going to share the details with you. Thanks so much, guys, for watching. So I'm going to show you basically how we came up with a value for this property for our trustee. This property was referred to us by an attorney that we've worked with before. It was a complicated trust situation where multiple properties had to be divided. Apartment building and other properties were involved. So one of the kids got this property, one of the kids got that property, that kind of thing. So my client inherited her mom's house, the home that she lived in, which was located on Moore Park Street, right where Sherman Oaks meets Studio City. And we got the call. And the first thing we recognized with this property is that it was 3,250 square feet in size, and it was zoned R3. Normally R3 properties are larger lots where you can do a lot to them, build multiple units, and you've got a real investment opportunity where you can take down a smaller house that's underperforming on a lot and have a good investment. This particular one was still zoned R3, but it was on a 3,250 square foot lot, which is very unique. It turns out there are a few of these along Moore Park, right where Sherman Oaks and Studio City meet one another. But the problem is there's not a lot of comps for that, right? So how do you determine the value, right? I think we wound up getting a little bit lucky in two ways on this particular property, right? So the first one was we needed some kind of a baseline, right? Let's say you've got a property like this with no available comps. Okay, the problem is these developers are going to come in and they're going to promise the sun, the moon, and the stars, and they're going to tie it up under contract. Then after they've got it under contract, then they're going to hire the architect who's going to look at things and then figure out what you can and can't do. So I've been down this road before. I'm going to show you another property that was absolutely a nightmare. In fact, what I'll do is I'll just show it to you right now. Here it was right here on the corner. Here is my 4800 Mary Ellen. So this was also an R3. The interesting thing with this property, so this is a single family residence. My listing was the corner of Riverside and Mary Ellen here. Okay. I think this was a 62 or 300 square foot lot. And this property next door was owned by a decedent's boyfriend. It wasn't owned by the boyfriend. It was actually owned by the trustee, the son in New York. The boyfriend had he didn't have a life estate. He had a period of time in which to live in the house before it needed to be sold. And it just turns out the two of these were going to become available at the same time. But still, it's tricky, right? Because there was a 20-foot building line. There was a queue condition on the property. There were all these things that were preventing one from being able to build on the lot. You're butting right up against a single family, so that created height restrictions. On top of that, there was an individual that had been previously living in this home as a rental. So whenever you have that type of situation, you wind up having to have a certain percentage of the units be low income, so it really messes with the formula. So anyways, it's complicated, but you add to the fact that this is only a 3,250 square foot lot. So there's two options here, right? One is to go find similar property and look at what they did. And if it's not recent, you just have to like throw it up against the wall, right? The other option is to hire an architect, some type of an expediter or / architect, look at what's possible, pay for a consultation, maybe not draw a plan. To be honest with you, in my opinion, it doesn't really matter having a plan. It's just having somebody tell you what can be done there. Because in the end of the day, I'm either comping this as a single family residence, which is what it is. This is a single family dwelling, or I'm going to comp it as income. So the only way I can comp it for income purposes is to know what can be built on it, right? You can't just take R3 and look at the code and just know. It's more complicated than that. There are a lot of variances and issues and certain things that affect ultimately what can be done. So the good news for this trustee is they didn't have to spend the extra money to figure it out. We found a property down the road that had traded and that had been developed. So this one right down the street here, 12957, very similar property as you can see, single family residence, 3250 lot with a garage in the back, basically identical to ours, identical, right? What they wound up doing, first of all, they bought this property 3 years ago, right? So we can't make value adjustments for today and just say, hey, if they got this then and come up with some arbitrary percent increase between then and now and just throw a number. It really depends on the development and what can be done. But the good news for us was this guy had already done it, okay? So when I walked over and got here, green fence was already up, the structure was already built. It was a 3-story structure. It was a duplex with an attached ADU. Now, for those of you who are lucky enough to hear this information, this is a lot of good stuff here. Developers are taking advantage of the ADU right and attaching it to the main building. So they're building with, let's say it's an R1 lot, right? 5,000 minimum lot, 45% of the lot size, all you can do. 6,500 lot, you're talking about 3,000, you no longer can build a 4,000 square foot house. So what are they doing now? They're building the ADU up to 1,200 square feet. They're attaching it to the house. And then as soon as it's signed off by the city, they're knocking a wall down, and then that just becomes part of the house, and that's how they're getting the bigger house. So same thing here, right? So they took 2 bedrooms with an ADU, and most likely, and maybe he kept it as an ADU, I have no idea, I'm not into his business, but one of the things that I'm guessing you can do is you can take the wall down between the ADU, create an entryway, and then that becomes unit number 3 with a separate entrance. Boom, there you go, 3-unit deal. So it also had a rooftop deck. It had about 3,400 square feet of living space in the property. So each unit was around 1,100 square feet. So we ran the comps on that. We figured we can get around 3,000 plus in income. So you're talking around $10,000 a month. You take the purchase price minus property taxes, insurance, maintenance, do the math, come up with a cap rate. And at about 5%, we came up with around $900,000 for the acquisition price, including the cost to build the development, right? So we had some idea as to what we would want to charge for this or ask for this lot. The seller actually had an appraisal that was a little bit higher, but given the fact that the appraiser did not use any 3,250 square foot lots or R3, we really didn't know, what could be done there. So what we did is we took high quality day and night photos of this property. Now, the key, I think, at least the way that I see things, is to try and grab the attention of as many buyers and sellers in the marketplace. I come across trustees and sellers all the time that go, well, this is a total teardown. No one's ever going to live in this house. I'm not going to invest $1 in it. And of course, what do they get? They just get investors to write offers on it, right? First of all, the responsibility of the trustee is to maximize the value of the asset, right? And so what we're trying to do here is position the property so that it's available for not just a developer or just any investor, but also an owner user. So we want to sell the opportunity that was presented, because in the end of the day, when you have multiple offers on a property, you have a greater chance of getting a higher price. So what we did here is we did the first photo on top of the lot with a drone, shaded out around, and basically showed this really more as a traditional development opportunity, okay? But as you can see in the MLS, we said, attention developers, investors, and owner users, welcome to 13053 Moore Park Street, blah, 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 okay? So then what we did is we took high quality photos of the property, wanted people to see it. We do these really good YouTube videos. I can just show you real quickly. I don't know if you're gonna be able to hear this or not.
What's up, guys? Welcome to 13053 Moore Park Street.
Yeah, so that's, and then we just talk about it. We do the drone, we show the property, we get people excited about it, talk about the possibilities, everything you can do there. Here we're talking about what's around the property, the North Valley Riverwalk. So it turns out we actually wound up having multiple offers, one from an investor and the other from an owner user. So we basically sold the lifestyle. And the reason why the owner user wound up writing an offer on this property was because in Sherman Oaks / Studio City, this property, as you can see, is in Studio City, California, but I use Sherman Oaks in the SEO tags for the purpose of getting more people interested in Sherman Oaks in my content, is that in this particular location, it's impossible to find a single family home to live in under 1.3, 1.4, 1.5. So here we are in this amazing location at $899. So we had an owner user and an investor. We had the high quality photos. During the video, we talked about how you can gate this right here and create a little lovely courtyard. I mean, you could literally wall and gate this and create an entry and have like a little turfed grassy yard for play. You can see the house needed updating. It's in kind of run down condition. It had oak floors, which, believe it or not, could be sanded. The windows were decent. It didn't even have central air and heat. It had a wall unit, as you can see. But you'd be surprised, guys, when you take a property like this, sand and refinish the floors, paint the walls, take down the partition, open it up, take the ceiling fan down, get a new Mitsubishi unit in there, a mini split system, how habitable this can be in a very short period of time with not a tremendous amount of money. Now, granted, the kitchen in here is original, so I don't know really how, people are comfortable with that, but you can absolutely live in this space for now, do it later. So, getting in carpet, covering floors, pull the carpet up, sand and refinish the hardwood floors, original bathroom, doable, right? Doable. This is off the primary. So this was interesting. The house actually had 2 bedrooms. This was one of them. So they created a partition here in a hallway, but you actually had to walk through a bedroom to get to the second bedroom. So and that was again because the lot was so compressed. Here we are. This is that primary, which is a full bath. It also had a laundry area in there. And then that's the bathroom, which is a little rough. And then they had this like sunroom addition off the back, which, you know, it's interesting. I mean, it's substandard construction. I mean, I probably would have taken it out and made another yard. It just depended on how much space I would need. There's the sunroom. But you can see how if you take the sunroom down, you'd actually have a really nice space here for a usable lot. This is a storage area above the garage. There are 2 car parking spaces in front of, I believe there are 2 parking spaces in front of the garage. The garage is recessed from the alley. So either 2 or 1 at least, and maybe park 1 on Moore Park. Possibly convert this into an ADU. So you could have a duplex. You can fix this up, turn that into an ADU with the storage up above. So, you know, just opportunities abound. The good news is we wound up getting multiple offers on this one. We wound up selling it for $930. So we were $30 whatever $1,000 over the asking price. The problem is that we had a busted sewer line that came up during the inspection. So this is a classic example of why sometimes it's better to sell as is and not deal with this kind of stuff. But the delta between the $930 offer that we had and the backup buyer for the investor, which was $850, was enough for us to go with this owner user buyer. But during the course of the inspections, the buyer found out that the sewer line from the house had a gigantic belly and was busted up, and the sewer line was kind of on the other side of Moore Park. So this is a giant public works project. We're talking $40,000 to $50,000 on the repair, and my seller just got unfortunate. It's possible that, you know, if we went with the other buyer, they would have just bought it as is with no inspections, and sometimes that's the way to go. But you also don't get the release of liability. So in this particular case, we sold it to the owner user. They negotiated for a $45,000 credit. We gave them a credit in exchange for a release of liability. So that's the key, which I think was good for the client. They wound up getting more money as a result. Guys, that's selling an R3 lot in Sherman Oaks. It's a little bit different than selling regular residential property. You're looking, you know, with a residential property, you're basically looking at the dwelling that's on the property and its condition based on what's traded around it. Of course, you can mix in there the fact that something may be a tear down and you have to look at the land value to a builder versus the value to a resale and figure out whether or not to put money into it to fix it up for sale. But with R3, it's a little bit different because it's units. You really need to know how much you can get out of a property so that you can then do the math on it and come up with some kind of understanding as to what the value should be, because the consequences of pricing inappropriately are too high. I mean, yes, you could price it up here and then make your reductions and finally get to the landing point. But on that Mary Ellen deal, you know, I advised the seller to go to an architect like a Crest, get a opinion of what could be done so that we knew. And that way, you know, if people were writing these offers that were really high, we'd know that they wouldn't be possible. So we had like 5 offers on the property for like a $3 million, and they all promised that they were going to close, and they all canceled. And it really, in the end of the day, was because they didn't know what they can do until they called the architect. So my advice is, if you're selling R3 lots in Sherman Oaks or Studio City or Valley Village or anywhere, first of all, call Alan Taylor, 818-217-1767. But call a developer, call an architect, figure out what you have. I think it puts you in a greater position of strength in knowing what you have. The alternative is you just pick a low price, throw it in the MLS, and see where the offers go, and then find out, you know, that they're not going to be able to do it and they're going to cancel on you. The alternative, of course, was, hey, do all your due diligence, come back to us with no contingencies. But that's tricky too, because if you don't really know what you can do, you know, people aren't going to know what they're going to be able to pay. So anyway, selling R3 lots can be tricky. We appreciate your guys watching this video. Don't forget to watch us some more in the future. Like, subscribe, comment below, and we will get you